Transport Evolved has developed a reputation over the years. Some of it is good, and some of it is bad. I mean, I hope, as the person who founded the channel, that we're known for our honest takes on the EV world, for our ability to avoid bovine byproduct and to try and provide context. As we are very eager of saying, context is queen. But when it comes to the bad stuff, we are known for being the kiss of death for certain EVs. Companies we've visited, products we've tried, that have either declared bankruptcy, gone under, or just vanished off into the night shortly after we raved about them, or maybe just featured them. And when it comes to automotive reviews, we are at the bottom of the pile. We have traditionally been given press cars just either as or just before the automaker decides to stop making them. For example, there was the Audi we reviewed, the Q8 e-tron. It was actually cancelled after we reviewed it. Then there was the F-150 Lightning. It was cancelled the week we had it. And then there's this, the Volvo EX30 Cross Country. Yeah, if you're in North America, this car is not going to exist at the end of this year. You can buy one for the 2026 model year, but after that, you're out of luck. But you know what? For the rest of the world, with normal democratic processes and people in charge at the top who think that wind turbines are good rather than kill birds and gay baby whales, you can still buy one of these. And so, when we were offered it, I said, sure. I have a feeling that this car is able to cash those checks in a way that many other car companies are not. See you on the dirt track.
Look me in the eyes and tell me that you're not seeing what I'm seeing. We're so lost in the right direction.
If you watched my Volvo EX30 review from last year, you will know that I found the car to be frustrating. And I found it to be frustrating because it displayed this rather bizarre split personality vibe. On one side, it handled impeccably well, it was responsive, it had generally good driving characteristics, and it did everything you asked it to do. But on the other side, the touchscreen display, adjusting things like the mirrors, it was all, to put it bluntly, a bit of a palaver. And I don't want to bury the lead here, because if you get behind the wheel of the EX30 Cross Country and expect it to be a completely different car, you are going to be sorely disappointed. The EX30 Cross Country is the more ruggedized, off-road capable variant of the EX30. That's basically where this starts and finishes. You get a little bit of extra ground clearance, so the the entry-level EX30 and the regular EX30, they both have a ground clearance of 6.9 inches, which isn't the best. The EX30 Cross Country adds a little bit extra, and I do mean a little bit extra. So it's 7.7 inches of ground clearance. And that's been made possible by a little bit of a tweak to the suspension just to raise the car up a bit. It's got different wheels and different shoes, and those shoes are designed to have a taller sidewall, which means that you end up with a slightly more capable vehicle off-road, which again is why I'm starting this review on this bit of gravel trail. I should point out that, like the regular EX30, there is a lot of power to be had under your right foot, especially if you go into sport mode and if your kind of dream is to recreate some Swedish rally vibes from the 1980s and 1990s. I have a suspicion that the EX30 Cross Country would do it without too much of a hesitation. But this car also has a bit of a dark side, a bit of a I'm going to misbehave and let you. I just got the back end to go out a little bit there. And, you know, with a little bit of persuasion, there's a little bit of counter steering there on that. And right now, I just feel like the car is maybe not quite as well balanced as it could be. Okay, I'm off the gravel trail. Now I'm back on the black stuff. And I know this is the second review in a row where I've started on a gravel trail, but I feel like the Subaru Solterra versus the EX30 Cross Country on gravel are very different beasts. So the Subaru Solterra had off-road capability to effectively help you get to where you were going. It feels like the EX30 Cross Country has this little dark performance underbelly for off-road behavior. And as I've already said, it gives you that, like, come on, wouldn't you like to be a Swedish rally driver too? And that's because you get 422 horses, which is exactly the same as you get in the EX30 all-wheel drive. However, the sprint time is 0.1 seconds longer, and that's because of the tweak to the wheels and the tires. But you still get that glorious all-wheel drive capability, you get that rear bias, you get that, come on, let's do it, let's go quickly, egging you on, that I think could get you in a lot of trouble. Unlike a lot of cars out there that have a lot of safety features that are designed to make sure that you don't do something silly, it feels like the EX30, at least in sport mode, will let you go right up to the danger zone and maybe dangle your foot over it before it goes, okay, come on, you've had enough, time to cut you off. And I will admit, back there, I was easing off the throttle before the car was telling me to. On the road though, it feels like a regular EX30 all-wheel drive. And that's no surprise. So it's got the same 69 kilowatt hour battery pack. It has the same-ish range. This one has a little bit less range than the all-wheel drive on paper because of those tweaks to the wheel and the suspension. But I guess that if you were to drive this gently, you're going to see a similar kind of range. So right now, the car is predicting 207 miles of range. I've got 82% in the battery. That's not ridiculously small. It's not wonderfully great, but it's a range you could live with. And you have sustained fast charging rates of around 150 kilowatts. And you can do that at a CCS charging station, or you can do that in the US and Canada at a NACS Tesla supercharger. And you can buy an adapter to go from NACS to CCS type. 1. Now, this car is a CCS inlet car, and I suspect that Volvo looked at what was going on in the US and went, yeah, it's not worth adding NACS to it if we're not going to make this car in the US anymore. Let's just keep it as a CCS car. And I'm totally okay with that. It's got up to 11 kilowatts of level 2 charge capability, so you can charge it up reasonably quickly. And look, 69 kilowatt hours is only slightly larger than the battery pack in the Chevrolet Bolt EV. So you're looking at, honestly, a similar real world range. Now, I've spoken to several different people who've driven both the EX30 all-wheel drive and the EX30 cross-country, and it seems to be a bit of a split. Some people prefer the cross-country setup, saying it feels a little bit smoother on rough road, but at the same point, others have said it's a little more bumpy and a little more bouncy, and I can see both setups. Personally, I really like how this car feels, the vibe it gives as I'm driving. If you want a performance feeling EV, this is a pretty good choice. In my last review of the EX30, I commented that this car felt like a vehicle that was developed by committee by a bunch of engineers after somebody else had driven a Tesla and then described it to them. But I do want to touch on a couple of quirks and features that caught me unaware and also caught Vi unaware. And it wasn't until Vi brought up these quirks this morning when we were discussing the shoot that I was like, oh yeah, that happened to me too. And the first one is the gear selector. This gear selector is just like the gear selector that you had in the original Tesla Model 3. So you move it up to go into reverse, you move it down to go into drive, you press the button to go into park. So if you are a Tesla driver and you're looking to switch away from Tesla, I have no idea why anyone would want to do that. This will be very familiar to you. It also has the double tap down to engage Volvo's semi-autonomous driver assistance features. And on paper, that sounds very cool, that sounds very intuitive. But there have been a couple of occasions while I have been driving this, while Vi has been driving this, where we accidentally hit the D button twice. And then as we took our foot off the brake and moved out of a parking space, the car suddenly started to accelerate, and it tried to accelerate to 20 miles an hour. And that was because we were leaving a stationary parked space, and the car thought that we wanted to go into this semi-autonomous driver assistance mode. And in both cases, there was definitely a, what are you doing? Both to the car and also to that Toyota that was trying to merge very unsuccessfully in the road. That said, Volvo did manage to retain some of the things that Tesla doesn't have in its cars anymore. So it's still got, proper light controls and windshield wiper controls. If you hit the top of the left-hand stalk, you get the front wash function. If you hit the bottom one, you get the rear wash function, which, by the way, in a car that I have just been driving down a dirt trail briskly, having that rear wash wipe is a godsend, because a lot of cars today don't have them anymore, and it drives me insane. Oh, and by the way, we still have decent manual, well-feeling HVAC vents, which means you can direct the airflow to where you want it to go just by using your hand. That is beautiful. Unfortunately, this is where the rage sets in. And if you watch my original video, you'll know there is plenty of rage to go around. The first thing I want to note here is that this car has very few physical buttons. There's no buttons on the driver's door. There's no buttons on the passenger doors. If you want to wind your windows up, you'll find the actual buttons for that are right here, and you only have 2 buttons. And like the Volkswagen ID4 of previous years, you have to use that silly button, that capacitive touch button, to engage the rear windows. You can only open the front windows and the rear windows in pairs. So you can do the front two windows together and you can do the rear two windows together. Interestingly though, the rear seat passengers do not have any buttons in their doors either, other than the mechanical door release. I understand why Volvo did it. It reduces complexity, it reduces build parts, it makes the car more affordable. But despite only having two buttons up front and that stupid capacitive button, if you want to activate the rear windows using physical switches, you just have to reach behind you and you can just do it like that. You can just wind the windows down and then wind them back up using actual factual buttons. I don't know if that's clever or if that's just annoying. I know that, back when electric windows were relatively new, that was a fairly common thing. The window controls would be in the center console. Like I say, it reduces wiring complexity. It makes it easier for everyone. But at the same point, I hate the capacitive front rear button, and that is standard on all the EX30s. So yeah, that's still there. And of course, the other bugbear that I had with the original EX30 that we drove was the fact it doesn't have a head-up display and it doesn't have an instrument cluster behind the steering wheel. You're looking there for the speed, which means you're going to have to look down here rather than looking straight ahead and just glancing down. That's more of a change for your eyes to deal with than just looking down. And I say that as someone whose very first car had a central speedometer, and I loved it because it was big, it was clear, and you could read the numbers even if you were, rattling along at 50 or 60 miles an hour. Unfortunately, with this car and the speedometer positioning that you have, you find yourself speeding. I find this car to be really well insulated despite its very minimalist interior. I'll come to that in a bit. And it's very easy to find yourself going over the speed limit if you don't keep your wits about you. And obviously 422 horsepower. I'm afraid I didn't look that up and convert it to kilowatts before I left. So, Vi, if you please. Thanks. It's a beefy, capable car. And it doesn't matter how fast you're going. If you bury your right foot to the ground, the car takes off. But without that speedometer in your line of sight, it's all too easy to go, oh, naughty word. It is gloriously good fun to drive, and it is very engaging, and it's very fun, and it's very, I want to drive this car and I wouldn't mind owning this car. Until you have to deal with the infotainment system, until you need to adjust your mirrors, until you need to tweak anything. This car is running a Google Android system. It's built in partnership with Google, and it's a very good tablet. It's actually not too bad. It's quite responsive. It does what you want. The voice command system has exactly the same bugs as all of the other Google-based systems that we've used. You know my feeling about having to sign into Google on your car to have access to your address book and all of that other stuff. That is if you are an Android user, because while this car does have wireless CarPlay, it does not have wireless Android Auto. If you are an Android user, you are expected to sign into your Google account and give your car access to all of your datas. And that may leave you with a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. It certainly would me. And I am an iPhone user, so take from that what you will. What really bugs me though is the fact that if I want to adjust the mirrors, for example, I have to do it all using the touchscreen. And there's two bad things here. We know that touchscreens in cars fail. The original Tesla Model S had problems with its touchscreen. Model 3s have had issues with their touchscreens. Ford has had issues with its touchscreens over the years. And, you know, it could be a a physical fault, i.e., your kid managed to smash the touchscreen and you need to get it replaced, or it could be a software/hardware fault. Something goes wrong with the device and it needs to be replaced under warranty. And if that happens and you need to adjust your mirrors, well, good luck, because there's no button here to select a driver profile, and there's no way to adjust your mirrors without having this active. There's no physical switch, so you can't change that physically. And you have to use these buttons on the steering wheel, which, and maybe I'm showing my age as a Gen Xer, get off my lawn, you punks. I want physical switches. It's not intuitive. You have to go into the menu. You have to select which of the mirrors you want to adjust and how and where. And then you have to use the buttons on the steering wheel. Now, they are physical buttons, but there's not a great deal of feedback. And I struggled to adjust the mirrors on this when I first got behind the wheel. In fact, I sat there for 8 minutes fuming because when I pressed the button, it didn't always respond. I'd press it, I'd wait, the mirror would move, and then it stopped moving. And I discovered that if you are at the extent of one of the axes of travel, you may not be able to adjust the other axes. So I had to kind of back off a bit and then it'll let me adjust it. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. If you own the vehicle and you're the only person driving it, and maybe you have a housemate or a spouse or a child who drives it, they can pair their phone with the car and the car will know when you get in that it is you, and you'll be able to save your driver profile. And you can. There are driver profiles, you can save it so it will remember your preferred setting for the seat and the mirrors. But I also regularly find myself adjusting my mirror positioning, and that can sometimes be influenced by what I'm wearing, how I'm feeling, and what kind of road I'm driving on. So if I'm doing a long distance trip, I tend to be a little bit more relaxed in my seat. In this car, if I'm driving and I realize that I need to change my seat, I have to stop, pull over, adjust my seat, adjust my mirrors, and then get back on the road because I have to interact with this. And that makes it a whole palaver, and I hate it. Absolutely hate it. For long distance road tripping, if you are a front seat passenger, I think this would be a really comfortable vehicle to be in. But I need to make you aware that the car, while it is sold as a 5-seater, it really isn't. It's a 2+. So I'm not particularly tall, like I'm 5'8", 5'9", and I'm not someone known for having their seat a long way back, but there's not a huge amount of rear leg room. And I think if you had anybody who was tall sitting behind you, you would have issues. This felt as good a location as any to wrap up my review of the EX30 cross country. If it felt like in the car I was a little disjointed, I'm going to be honest, it's because I was. This car is so engaging and so demanding of your attention that it's kind of difficult to drive it and speak to camera, to remember the specs, to give an on-screen presentation that makes sense. And that's not because this car is bad, it's because it is an engaging drive. When you are behind the wheel, when you are driving it, all you want to be focused on is driving it. Yeah, this is packed with the standard Volvo safety tech. It's going to keep you safe. And sometimes this car will nag you. You're not looking in the right direction, or there's something that you need to be aware of that could be impacting your driving. Like if you're driving on the freeway and you're too close to the person in front, it puts a little warning up and says, hey, back off a bit. But what makes this car special is that there's still a little bit of Swedish blood running through what is essentially a Chinese-made car. Yes, I stand by what I said about the EX30 all-wheel drive. It feels as if someone described a Tesla to a bunch of engineers and they set about recreating that in a Volvo body. And you will either like that or you won't. Handling-wise, drivetrain-wise, on the road, this is one of the better performance, and I'm saying this in air quotes, EVs that you can buy. Especially with those wheels, especially in the cross-country guys with that extra little bit of ground clearance. And on a gravel track like this, well, you can see from the car, from the tyres, from the tailgate, it eggs you on. I was driving down this gravel road at 50, and the car was like, yeah, bet you'd like to see what 90 feels like. And that's the kind of car you want to drive on a gravel trail. One that feels sure-footed enough to egg you on to going faster, but one which has enough safety smarts to make sure that you don't wrap yourself around a tree. I like that. I want that in a rally-inspired, rally-capable car. But instead of pushing really hard into the rally heritage, Volvo just went, this is a more non-tarmac friendly vehicle. And you either get it or you don't. I still have the same niggles that I had with the all-wheel drive version of the EX30, and I suspect I would have those same niggles with the rear-wheel drive version. Namely, the interior doesn't have a whole load of storage. Some people don't like the minimalist feel. My wife, for example, got very upset when she realised there wasn't the usual storage options in the car. I agree with what she said about the glove box, which I will repeat for you here now. Why do you have to press a button on the centre touchscreen display to open a freaking glove box? And the glove box itself is not very large. This car has a Frunk. Good job, Volvo. But it's so small you can't even fit the supplied charge cable in there. The rear, ample enough storage space if it's just you and your other half, maybe a couple of suitcases, or you have medium to small-ish dogs. This car is capable with kids, if your kids are still in child seats, or they're quite young and not yet full-sized. But I think if you have a family of 5 who are all medium to large sized, it's going to be uncomfortable on a long distance trip. And while it does have the chops for long distance travel, 150-ish kilowatts for DC fast charging, and it does have the Google route planning because Google Automotive is built in, it's not a vehicle that I necessarily would want to take long distance road tripping. There are plenty of other options out there that I would be a lot happier with. But really, this is a car built for people who live in the suburbs, who live on the outskirts of a major city, or who want to adventure into the wilderness at the weekends to have a little bit of fun on dirt trails. As Vi pointed out earlier, this is almost like the ideal dirtfish car, a car that you drive to work Monday to Friday, and then at the weekend you take it to a special rally course and you have a little bit of fun. I would, wouldn't you? And if you would, then bear these 2 facts in mind. If you're in North America, well, if you're in the US, this car is going to be disappearing in about 4 months' time. If you're in Canada, it'll stick around, and you should definitely try one of these. If you're elsewhere in the world, great car, great option, and you should get behind the wheel. But as I alluded to at the very beginning of this video, we here at the channel, we're at the bottom of the press car list. We tend to get cars just as they've been cancelled or as they're about to be cancelled. And this is yet another vehicle that unfortunately is just gonna disappear. Thanks for watching today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I know this wasn't our usual comprehensive video, but it's really hard sometimes when you've already reviewed a vehicle to then turn around and say creative and new things about a vehicle that is essentially the same, but with a few nips and tucks. And because I drove the all-wheel drive version of the EX30, the power output is the same. So yeah, let me know in the down below if you would go for the all-wheel drive or the cross-country variant. I've already let you know which one I would like. Thanks to the amazing people scrolling by on either side of me right now. They are the reason that we are still here and able to make these videos. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so from $1.50 US a month on Patreon. You can also sign up and support us on the main YouTube channel. You can send us Ko-fi, you can send us old-fashioned checks, or you can visit our swag store and get this t-shirt and plenty more besides. As I have said for the last couple of weeks, my beloved lost her job at the beginning of June. We are now, I think, 2.5 weeks into June, and without her income, it's going to be increasingly difficult for me to be able to pay the bills at the house, because her income paid the mortgage and all of the bills, and then stuff we brought in for TE helped pay Erin and Vi and everyone else associated with the company and all of our bills, but it didn't pay me. So I now need to take a salary. So if you want this channel to continue, I need you all to help out. However small, it will all be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being the positive change that we need to see in the world. And until next time, keep evolving.